Today we will present our SERDP project titled NICE, Network Infrastructures Under Compound Extremes. Next slide, please. Our team comprises Northeastern University in Boston, the University of California at Berkeley, the US Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Lab, the US Army Corps of Engineers, and the US Naval Research Laboratory. Next slide, please. My co-presenters are Sue and Ben from the US Army Corps. I'll introduce the project vision and primarily discuss the science and engineering aspects, while Ben will take a deeper dive into the social sciences and Sue into the resilience of military installations. Next slide, please. The US Code on Military Installation Resilience emphasizes both robustness and recovery, focuses on weather extremes and broadly on environmental hazards, and considers the state of readiness both within an installation as well as the surrounding ecosystem supporting the installation. Next slide, please. The March 2019 flooding of the Air Force Base, reported in the Military Times, was just one demonstration of the clear and present danger faced by US military installations. Next slide, please. The challenge goes beyond US shores and even the US Department of Defense. The World Economic Forum, in their 2021 Global Risks Report, ranked climate, weather extremes, and environmental threats as among the global risks of highest concerns, along with infectious disease, and closely followed by cybersecurity. The US President's National Infrastructure Advisory Council discussed the increasing plausibility of compound extremes, such as opportunistic attacks, which are designed to take advantage of reduced service levels during or after natural hazards, for example, floods. Here we will consider a broad definition of compound extremes, including concurrent natural or man-made threats, which may be exacerbated by severe resource crunch, as well as sequential threats where one hazard occurs before the system gets a chance to recover from a prior hazard. Next slide, please. Energy and water resilience on military installations are especially susceptible to both climate change and cyber threats. According to the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Richard Kidd, energy water resilience on military installation is key to operational readiness. Next slide, please. Our proposed theory and methods for installation resilience subject to compound extremes are motivated by network science and system dynamics principles. The proposed theory relies on three mutually supporting hypotheses. First, resilience framing needs to consider both robustness and recovery in the context of system as well as elemental functions, and hence must go beyond traditional probabilistic risk assessment methods. Second, resilience and mission assurance can be maintained despite compound threats, some of which are unknown and may even be unknowable in advance. And third, attributes of both network topology and network dynamics can offer critical information for system functionality and resilience. So our proposed approach is based on relatively well-grounded theories and methods in multiplex network science and multi-scale system dynamics, which have been previously applied to interconnected lifeline infrastructure networks and urban metabolism-based sustainability, respectively. So our end goal is to demonstrate the theory on US DoD installations for mission assurance and decision support. Next slide, please. The project plans are motivated from our recently published work. We show two examples here. On the left, we show our joint research led by Northeastern and PNNL, focused on the London Rail Multiplex. The network of three different but interlinked rail networks was subjected to flood hazards based on real flood maps for the City of London, along with simulated targeted attacks. Robustness patterns and recovery profiles were studied based on complex network attributes. These results were published in 2020 in the Nature Research Journal Scientific Reports. On the right, we show our research led by the University of California, Berkeley, focused on facility distribution and accessibility of resources in cities. Studies of 6 cities around the world showed how optimal distribution of facilities led to greater accessibility via urban road networks. These results were published in Science Advances in 2020. Next slide, please. Our project funding started in May 2021 for Northeastern University, which is the lead institute, and just last month for the partner organizations. So as of now, we can report preliminary progress from Northeastern's research. Our initial research plan for this SERDP project is drawn from our recent experience in infrastructure, resilience, and urban sustainability, but adapted to the hypotheses and problem at hand. On the left, we show a line of work where we examine the hypothesis that network topologies versus network dynamics offers complementary and supplementary insights for resilience in the context of urban rail transit networks in 8 cities around the world. Our initial results tend to support this hypothesis. On the right, we examine whether and to what extent an external surrounding ecosystem, specifically in this case, the urban transit rail network, or the T, in and around Metro Boston, as well as the greater Boston commuter rail, impacts installation resilience, specifically in this case, that of Boston Logan Airport. We examine compound extremes, or floods and opportunistic attacks in this case, with initial results suggesting that the robustness and recovery of surrounding transit systems, as may be expected, can significantly impact the airport's operations and readiness. These two hypotheses relate to the two aspects of installation resilience highlighted in the US military installation resilience code, which I showed earlier: resilience of the installation itself and that of the surrounding ecosystem. These initial results will be presented at 3 conferences: Complex Networks and Applications, the fall meeting of the American Geophysical Union, and the Society for Risk Analysis. Next slide, please. Moving forward, we would want to build a holistic view of resilience by examining coupled natural, engineered, and human systems. I have been viewing resilience in such coupled systems as a convergence of complexities, where the complexities should not be minimized, but must be harnessed to lead to actionable insights in a way that supports decisions and policies. The top figures show generic or broader insights, while the bottom figures show research led by our lab at Northeastern. I presented this perspective just a few days ago at the 2021 Resilience Week. So on the left, chaos and natural variability, including the so-called butterfly effect, dominate natural systems related to climate and the environment, with greater variability and uncertainty at stakeholder relevant resolutions such as cities and lifeline infrastructures. Nonlinear dynamics and stochastic variability impact cyber and physical threat characterizations as well. In the middle, cascading failures occur within lifeline networks such as power grids, or across lifelines such as power, communications, transportation, water networks. These systems are designed to be interconnected, but these linkages also make them susceptible to large-scale and collective failures. Such linkages may also point to the possibility of simultaneous recovery. On the right, complex human systems such as communities, cities, and institutions suffer from the tragedy of the commons. Preserving the natural environment and ecosystems, or maintaining critical lifelines and infrastructures, are everybody's problems, which are sometimes viewed as nobody's problem. Despite a 2009 Nobel Prize in polycentric management of complex social and biophysical systems, challenges remain in the implementation of resilience principles owing to policy myopia and financial disincentives. A theory for installation resilience needs to consider not just the science and engineering principles, but also the social science and policy dimensions. I'll now hand over to Ben Trump from the Army Corps, who as a research social scientist can speak much better than me on these issues. Ben will be followed by Susan Walters, also from the Army Corps, who will speak about the needs of US military installations and the relevance of our resilience theory and methods. Ben, please.
Thank you very much, Arup. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. So given the foundation that Arup has set for us, and understanding the importance of resilience for complex systems, particularly military installations, as they face compound threats which by definition are extremely rare events. You're talking about two shocks or two stresses, or one shock and one stress, that are relatively co-occurring in time and space and leverage a rather significant disruption. So the question remains, is given the foundation that we have, how can we pull from theory and practice of current resilience scholarship in order to better understand the needs of military complex systems and installations moving forward, and better parameterize and operationalize resilience in a variety of different systems and applications. On the left, this is a popular conception of one definition from the US National Academy of Sciences, referring to disaster resilience, which is the ability to plan and prepare for, absorb, recover from, and adapt to adverse events. Very close to the definition that Arup mentioned. So where I would recommend to go a step further is understanding the uniqueness that resilience offers. On the right-hand side, we split up resilience into the more traditional factors related to risk mitigation and risk management, such as buying down risk on one end, or hardening critical vulnerabilities and components of systems so the magnitude of disruption is not so grave. But then on the right-hand side, in the green portion, we're looking more at the slope of the curve, or what does recovery look like? The reason why resilience is so important is if we have a more expeditious recovery, it allows military missions, military installations, military personnel to recover their lost capacity, and then better be able to meet their mission requirements with minimal loss of time, money, manpower, and lives. Next slide, please. So the way that we unpack this is by looking at resilience as a function of time and of space. So when we're looking at individual events as well as compound threats, the way that we would do this is by understanding the phases of resilience as they affect the given system, which in this case, a complex system being the military installation. And we peg this against those NAS stages, the National Academy of Sciences, that works very well with the current military mandate: prepare, absorb, recover, adapt. Now, secondly, we look at the domains of resilience, or how resilience is influenced by these interlocking and co-occurring and mutually reinforcing nested systems, where you have some examples noted here. Of course, this could be well expanded out. Physical infrastructure, information systems, cognitive decision-making, and broader social stresses and culture. All of these are going to influence the resilience of our systems. Next slide, please. So when we're thinking about what does resilience mean and how can we battle test this, one of the rare silver linings of the COVID pandemic is it allows us to understand how we have certain disruptions, like a human pathogen on one end and a variety of environmental or mission-based disruptions on the other, both in terms of civil society in general, just to look at general complex systems theory, but also many military installations, such as the Texas freeze in February of 2021, multiple heat waves that occurred, as well as challenges related to return to the office, return to the workforce, minimizing exposure of SARS-CoV-2 to various military and civilian components that allow the military installation to run. Looking at the magnitude of disruption, by merging these various factors together and using case studies presented here, can allow us to begin to develop different methods to calculate how disruption to different components simultaneously of our complex system. For COVID, it would be workforce readiness. For military infrastructure, would be disruption related to, such as the deep freeze. We can begin to see how that compound threat influences the broader mission, as well as what steps we can take to incentivize recovery and adaptation. Next slide, please. And to conclude, when we're looking at complex systems, we are fundamentally trying to ask the question of how do different nested dependencies act and interact and rely upon one another to deliver a common good? Cyber systems, individuals, infrastructure, broader command and control, this all glues together within how our military installations function, how they are disrupted, and hopefully how they recover and adapt to a changing world. And with that, I will turn it to Sue.
All right, thanks for that, Ben, and a great introduction. Good day, everyone. I'm Sue Walters with the ERDIC Supply Research Planning Support Center. And I wanted to talk about how, a theoretical framework that Arup had, so greatly laid out the foundation can be applied to the various planning requirements set forth upon the installations as the installations are drowning with multiple requirements. A framework like this can help us pull together into a comprehensive way to address risk. But, just to kind of get us started, I'm sharing some graphics that have been probably shared quite often, indicating that threats and assessments and national level reports are making it clear that Army activities in the homeland and our installations are at increasing risks of disruption. Army installations often depend on infrastructure and service in surrounding communities, both subject to adversarial actions. And what we know today through a scientific lens, climate change is a threat to the readiness of military forces, not just operational, but its institutional services as well, the infrastructure. And it's a threat to national security and compounds the competition of already limited resources. Being one of the largest real property portfolios in the world, the DoD has a significant responsibility of doing more to improve operations and development for the resilience of our infrastructure. So go ahead and switch over to the next slide. And this is going to help us set the stage to where IWIP comes in and what it's intended to do, installation, energy, and water plans. That's what IWIP stands for. So we're probably tracking, and then in 2016, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy Installations and Environment directed all U.S. Department of Defense installations to prepare an installation energy and water plan, installation energy plan, or IEP. And so 2 years later, in 2018, the Army nodded an equally important role of water resilience by responding to the guidance and the preparation of installation energy and water plans, so dual network. The purpose of this plan is to coordinate higher level energy initiatives, planning energy projects, and future mission requirements as outlined in the installation's master plan. So it's forward looking to the future mission impacts that should be considered within the energy and water resilience of an installation. So energy and water assurance, reliability, quality, is key to ensuring military installations can perform mission essential functions under adverse conditions. And the IWIP aims to help installations decision makers look across missions and the various component plans before investing in energy and water assurance upgrades. But this type of plans holistic review really helps to ensure the requirements are not identified in isolation, capabilities are not developed in silos, and resources are used efficiently. But our understanding of the interdependencies of our networked infrastructure might be a little short-sighted. Installations, energy, and water planning really is intended to generate a shift in thinking where installation energy managers have been indoctrined where payback and savings to investment ratio are the only rule for project funding, but that's no longer the case. We also now think what really is the requirement when we ask ourselves how resilient is resilient enough when installations are asked to set their own goals, and on how are we dealing with privatized systems. So these are, as a thought of the Army, thinks about the installation, energy, and water planning process. It's undoubtedly more complicated when planning for the preparedness and resilience during an outage due to compound extremes, as infrastructure networks have this inherent interconnectedness beyond just energy and water, but other networks such as transportation, communications, and the environment. And this is where NICE can help us be a wrapper around this framework. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the next slide just to give a little bit more about IWIP and what it's intended to do to right the ship in terms of an installation security posture. And so, how does the Army do this, and how does the Army enable a deployable force regardless of the adversarial challenges, placed on the energy and water resources? It's what they're looking at, of course, is through a data-driven approach, relying on installation performance metrics, such as the installation status report of mission capacity, which is the Army's gold standard for defining an installation's energy and water security posture, establishing the energy and water needs for critical missions, and helps us develop a baseline, helps us with assessing risk and opportunities, all while applying a robust multi-criteria decision analysis and a collaboration framework to generate solutions. And so that way, solutions are then integrated into a roadmap to show incremental steps towards improving security and resilience of an installation. installation systems and operations to accomplish its mission. And that's what we're seeing here is that, it's just left to right and kind of down around the page is that we have this ISRMC data, standard that helps us through an MCDA process along with a much other robust analysis to help us generate a project list and a Gantt chart as you see down below. But kind of more thinking within the NICE framework, we're going to go ahead and slide to this next slide here, and it's really looking at policy and where NICE the theoretical framework can really take us. So looking back again at 2018, the National Defense Strategy clearly articulated that our battles are no longer being fought abroad, but at our fence line. Furthering the resilience of our homeland, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2022 required the inclusion of military installation resilience information in installation master planning. So including not just energy and water resilience, but climate resilience as well. So the Department of Defense responded, and that's where that third graphic comes from, is the Unified Facility Criteria for Installation Master Planning was updated to incorporate climate change effects into installation resilience components. And then what this does is translates for us, into the installation energy and water plan. But there's also subsequent IWIP policy guidance that came forth. But really what the Army installation strategy, that very farthest right, the fourth graphic there on the right, requires us to look at is, again, another shift in the way that we look at installation resilience. They're having us look at it as an organic response across the enterprise, allowing a constellation, of operational services to form and reform quickly, shifting mission and focus between installations based on need and local and regional conditions. So it's creating the adaptability of resilience across the installation enterprise. So as we understand, threats are not just localized at the installation, but can degrade the Army's ability to deploy regionally. We must try to ask ourselves, what's the appropriate scope of analysis here with the NICE theoretical framework? Is it to analyze the compound extremes at the installation level, such as within the installation energy and water planning process, or dynamically across a portfolio as a network common operating picture, looking at the enterprise's operational and institutional environments, or both? And I think the answer probably lies somewhere between both extremes. These are just a few of our takeaways from our initial findings, prompting efforts like NICE to potentially address the compound extremes within the IWIP framework, and to challenge ourselves to think about how the Army can potentially leverage these principles around the NICE framework to rapidly address resilience dynamically across the installation enterprise by enabling planning at the speed of relevance. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to Arup to close us out.
Before we go there, let me just summarize what we have done here. We have collectively attempted to provide a comprehensive perspective of our recently launched SERDP project, which focuses on theories, methods, and principles for techno-social resilience under compound extremes with a view to US military installations. While I provided a broad introduction and presented our vision along with a glimpse of our ongoing work, especially on the science and engineering aspects of installation resilience, Ben gave his perspective as a research social scientist and explained the connection to policy principles and stakeholder needs. Sue discussed the relevance of our proposed and developing theories and methods of installation resilience to real-world US military installations, including constellations of such installations with a focus on energy and water planning needs. Thank you very much. We are now open for questions.